Now, this was one of the top stories on Arise News in the last 24 hours or so. Nigeria's top industrialist and Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, warning about the dangers of the continued hike in interest rates in Nigeria. Those rates are now, of course, at a staggering 30%, and Mr. Dangote sounded the alarm that it is stifling the country's economy and making it almost impossible for local industries to survive and thrive. But at the same event, Nigeria's Vice President, Kashim Shettima, said that the government will prioritize made in Nigeria goods and is joining forces with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to develop a roadmap and a policy framework that would, as he put it, refocus the country's manufacturing sector. But with so many factories and manufacturers either going bust or on the verge of going bust, and with interest rates shooting through the roof, how on earth is the government planning to refocus the manufacturing sector?
Import dependence is equivalent to importing poverty, exporting jobs. Anything that you import, you are importing poverty into your nation and you are exporting jobs out. No power, no growth, no prosperity. So unless you have a power, you will not have growth, you will not have prosperity. Today we're battling with a very high interest rates. This interest rate is now saying that we should fight inflation. Interest rate is 30%. There won't be any job creation because we're actually stifling growth. So interest rate can remain 30, but then no growth will happen unless that interest rate goes down.
I feel the pain of the hard times our manufacturers are facing, particularly regarding the rising operational costs due to the inevitable fallout of the ongoing reforms. The reforms are aimed at making our economy stronger and better, and most importantly, in the interest of our future generations. Through collective efforts by the government and the private sector, we will transcend bonds and limits that have caused and have a cause to smile later. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we must at all costs shift our economy from being import dependent. Both the private and public sectors have relied too much on imported goods we can actually produce at home, undermining our own industrial potential.
Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima there, and before him the country's top industrialist Aliko Dangote. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the development economist and investment banking executive, Dr. Nemeka Obioreri, and here in Abuja by the development expert and public policy analyst, Abba Kaka. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me come to you first, Dr. Obioreri. What is your reaction to Aliko Dangote, Nigeria's top industrialist, warning that the continued hike in interest rates to the point where it's literally going through the roof is stifling Nigeria's economy at a time when you need strong local industries to attract foreign direct investment?
There is nothing Aliko Dangote said that some of us have not said over the last 1 year. High interest rates driven by high monetary policy rates is antithetical to development, to manufacturing and productivity. Now, but we need to situate this properly. Why do we have high MPR rates? We need to understand why we are where we are, then credibly profile solutions that will help this country to get out of the wood. The Central Bank of Nigeria, remember, they are the monetary policy managers. The Central Bank of Nigeria deploys countries of actions and policies and programs to control the volume of money in circulation. Those who run the physical side, the president, the governors, National Assembly members and State Assembly members are the physical managers. Their job is to deploy the powers of taxation and public spending to provide stability and economic production. What has happened over the last 1 year, in fact, over the last 9 years, is that we have deployed monetary policy instruments to tackle even fiscal policy problems that are not supposed to be so. 95% of the problems of Nigeria are from the fiscal side. Why is Central Bank of Nigeria using high MPR rates? That is the only way they can attract foreign private investors, because the foreign direct investors are not coming. And those who are already invested here are exiting this economy because of the suffocating economic climate and the floppy policy somersaults that we have here. The only way central bank, the only instrument available for them now is to increase MPR to see if the FPIs, who are like the sharks who bay for blood, they migrate where they can generate and maximize their returns. The only way we can tackle this, we have inflation. And the inflations are driven by two factors. One is foreign exchange related, and one is food related. And the food insecurity in Nigeria is driven by insecurity across the 6 regions of Nigeria. Nigeria has capacity to produce 99% of what we consume here and export nothing less than $375 billion worth of non-oil goods and services. But we are not doing so because of insecurity. And we need to tackle insecurity holistically. Our foreign exchange earner, major earner, is the crude oil. 85% of our forex. Why did we not have this kind of volatility under Olusegun Obasanjo? One, Olusegun Obasanjo, when he became president, inherited 1.8 million barrels a day oil production. Price of crude oil was $17.34. But Olusegun Obasanjo ensured two things. Crude oils were not stolen. Leakages were stifled. Our PMS consumption under Obasanjo, even when we had a middle class that was buoyant, higher purchasing power for Nigerians, was 2.228 million liters per day. Obasanjo ensured two things. Crude oil was not stolen. Downstream was not overinflated. But under the current government, over the last 9 years, we lose $1.9 billion worth of our crude oil resources to thievery and inefficiencies. On the downstream sector, we lose most of our oil resources through over-invoicing and inflating of consumption figures of the PMS. In Nigeria, we spend $24 billion importing what we can refine here. So basically, the only way we can rein in and reduce the cost of lending, the only way we can support Cardoso to reduce MPR rate is for us to stop the oil thievery at the upstream, reduce the inefficiencies and criminality at the downstream. When we do this, we will have enough cushion and leeway to do this. But as long as we have refused to tackle insecurity, tackle crude oil thievery and inefficiencies, we are wasting our time.
Very good points, and we'll come back to you in a hot second, but let me come to you, Abba Kaka. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm assuming you cocked an ear to that National Manufacturing Policy Summit attended by leading industrialists such as Aliko Dangote, former Finance Minister Olusegun Aganga, and of course Vice President Shettima. The major concerns raised by Mr. Dangote and Mr. Aganga, which Dr. Obioreri has also expanded upon, was the lack of infrastructure. I mean, lack of electricity, the unavailability of affordable finance. But it all sounded like a broken record, didn't it? Because, I mean, you could have rewound to any time at Nigeria's history in the last few years, and they would have been saying the same thing. So Nigeria has essentially been stuck in the mud, although things appear to be definitely worse now than they were previously.
Well, thanks, Mr. Charles, for inviting me. Actually, yesterday's summit is a welcome development. You know, it couldn't have come at a better time than now. I commend the Vice President for prioritizing the manufacturing sector, and the government is paying now attention to the problems of manufacturing to, you know, help the economy out. The issues of financial inclusion as well as access to capital is the major two important factors that will be driving the economy.
Well, Aliko Dangote mentioned the lack of electricity.
Power,
If you haven't got that, you're not going anywhere.
Absolutely, because without addressing power, we are not going anywhere. And, you can see from what the Minister of Power, Adelabu, is also doing his best. But, everything is cramped within a short period of time, which is 1 year. But, as Aliko Dangote has said, first, I would like to commend Mr. Dangote for having the courage to build this private refinery at the cost of $20 billion. But look at the kind of sabotage that is going on. Because the government needs industrialists like him. The government needs to make sure that this refinery succeeds. And you build a refinery of $20 billion and you have problem of access to crude in Nigeria, a crude exporting country. So the president needs to look at that seriously. And, even if it's NNPC or the international oil companies, whoever is sabotaging, Dangote is actually sabotaging the Nigerian economy. So therefore, I accept the fact that 30% interest rate, I'm a businessman as well as an importer as well. 30% interest rate, you can't do business with that kind of high interest rate. We are actually importing, excessive, excessive custom duties right now. One container, you are looking about 17.5 to 18 million naira to clear in Lagos today. That's why the port is actually, volume has dropped. It's almost, dry. And a lot of importers have actually stopped importing.
Right. Well, I hate to sort of burst your bubble there, but part of what the vice president was talking about was about people like yourself who do a lot of importation. I mean, he talked about rethinking Nigeria's reliance on importation of foreign products. And let me take this to you, Dr. Obioreri in Lagos. You heard, I hope you heard Abba Kaka there here in Abuja. The vice president talking about rethinking Nigeria's reliance on importation of foreign products at this stage. I mean, those are just words, aren't they?
Charles, Nigeria can easily produce most of the things that we import. And this issue of somebody being sabotaged, I don't think anybody is being sabotaged. The problems are fundamental. Just let us address this issue. Annually, we import $24 billion worth of refinery, white petroleum product and minerals that we can easily produce here. Just we have refineries in Port Harcourt, in Warri, and Kaduna with combined refining capacity of 445,000 barrels a day. Those refineries have not been working. They are not older than most refineries are working across the whole world. Charles, if we want to make this country work, we need to be very honest and situate things properly. Nobody goes to build a refinery without first of all thinking about the feedstock, even before putting the first foundation on the floor. I'll give you an example. Niger Delta Refinery is one refinery in Nigeria, Mola Refinery. Before Niger Delta Refinery put in one block, they already had a marginal field they were operating under the Arade Group. No investor put money on ground to do refinery without first of all considering his crude oil feedstock, even signing agreement over 20 years period. I was privileged to be part of the team buy side that bought NAFCON on air. The first thing that the buyers considered was how they would get the feedstock, and they had to sign 20-year contract with NGC, and that is number one. For the refineries to work, there must be institutional reform. Charles, let's face fact. NNPC is not working because of corruption. Refineries are not working because of corruption. Look at Brazil. Petrobras is working. 2.3 million barrels of crude oil production every day. $174 billion sized. $121 billion revenue annually. $37 billion profit annually. Crude oil reserve of Brazil, 15.5 billion barrels. Nigeria at $7.7 billion. Do you know why Nigeria is not working? Petrobras is owned only 28.5% by the Brazilian government. The rest are owned by institutional investors, just like we have in Nigeria liquefied natural gas. The only corporation that is working today, NLNG is working because federal government owns 49% and 51% is owned by private sector investors. If we want the refineries to work in the next 6 months, divest 60% of the federal government holding from NNPC, bring in deep-pocketed, capable, technically savvy private sector investors to take over that 60%. First of all, that would release $40 billion into the aviation account. Do IPO of $20 billion, extra money will come in. When you do this, Charles, it will become efficiently run like LNG, like the Petrobras. In the next 1 year, Charles will be shocked. This country will start doing 2.5 million barrels a day. Those refineries will start working. The truth is, the refineries are not working because of the corruption in the oil and gas sector. It's a sleazy environment, and we know this. Brazilians are not more righteous than Nigerians, but the Brazilian government clearly saw what we are experiencing today, and that they divested. Why is the federal government of Nigeria holding 100% shareholding in something that is not working? And interestingly, over the last 9 years, the same set of human beings that have been at the helm of affairs are still there. When you have for 9 years people who have been at the helm of affairs of an industry that is not working, what do, Charles? You rationalize. You do away with those who are not performing and bring in fresh blood, fresh hand, even if it means hiring expatriates. Aramco is working. Angola is working. Petrobras is working. Why is Nigeria not working? Why are we? They told us in 2021, $1.5 billion to be.
That's a very sound question, and you're making a heck of a lot of sense, I have to say, with the points that you're making. But we have to move on, and we've got to give Abba Kaka a chance to come in. And the other issue, Mr. Kaka, that was raised at that summit, which on the face of it sounds good, is the issue of patronizing Nigerian-made goods. And peripherally, Dr. Obioreri was also touching on that, because if you make Nigerian industries work, then you're kind of indigenizing a lot of things. But that brings us back to the issue of leadership by example, doesn't it? Which you, Mr. Kaka, have, talked about quite a lot, several times that we've had you here, because we don't see the Nigerian leadership patronizing Nigerian-made goods, do we? I mean, I've made this point myself repeatedly, but we don't see them driving made in Nigeria innocent cars and making the purchase of Nigerian manufactured goods the absolute prerequisite for any assistance or cooperation with countries in Africa, for instance, that Nigeria has influence over and often assists financially.
Absolutely. Last time I was here, if you remember, I talked about made in Nigeria goods. I actually mentioned innocent. Now, I'm glad that the president has directed the MDAs, and I hope all the ministries, and I also hope the 36 state governors will take a cue from that, because we have to not only go back to the farms, as I said also, but we have to patronize made in Nigeria goods, because the excesses of government in terms of foreign exchange, which the pressure on the Naira itself. Look at what the purchases of these Japanese cars by the National Assembly. A patriotic National Assembly wouldn't have done that. So I'm glad that the government is making sound policies. As the Vice President has said also, that we have to go back, the attitude change has to start.
Right.
We have to buy made in Nigeria, we have to produce and what we eat, and we have to produce to export. Otherwise, the pressure on the Naira will continue. But just to answer Doctor's issue, where he was saying that the government needs to divest. Of course, once you divest, you get like the Dangote Refinery, which is like 80% owned by him and 20% owned by others. So why is this not working also? Because of the same corruption. We know, even if all the three refineries in Nigeria are working, the combined capacity is less than what Dangote alone can produce. This is what we need. The government needs to gear towards that and give him the crude. They're not giving the crude for free.
Right. Okay.
He's buying the crude. Why should he import from the United States just to refine?
Okay, we're almost out of time, and I'm going to come to you for a final word, Dr. Obioreri. I mean, and just briefly, we had earlier the governors of the Southeast region. They were talking about Nnamdi Kanu, but they were also talking quite emphatically about the fact that they're working on economic integration of the region. How important is that if Nigeria